How do you know when to harvest your peppers? Do you harvest them when they're fully green? Do you wait until they've started turning just a little bit? Or do you wait until they are fully red before you pull them off the plant? Which one is right? Today, I'm gonna go over some of the different ways you can harvest your peppers, how to know when they are ready, and the pros and cons of some of the different methods. So the first thing we need to talk about is the progression of pepper ripening. So if you didn't already know, peppers, almost all of them will start out green, and then over time they will slowly turn to their final color, which for the vast majority of peppers is red, but sometimes you will see yellow or orange or other bright colors like that. And additionally, some peppers in rare cases will start out purple instead of green, but those are the exception and definitely not the norm. So just as an example, this is a Buena Mulata pepper. It starts out this color and then it ripens to this color. I call this my Clemson pepper because it generally has the purple and orange that really match the Clemson colors, and that's where I went to school. And another example here is Sugar Rush Peach. So it starts out this really pale yellow color and then ripens to this really peachy orange color. So there are definitely exceptions, but for the most part, we are looking at the green to red spread in most peppers. And when I say most peppers, I don't just mean hot peppers, I mean sweet peppers as well, especially bell peppers. So if you are a new gardener, you might not know that red bell pepper and green bell pepper come from the same plant. You don't actually need to buy two different varieties. So like I was saying, most peppers start out green and then eventually turn red. And then if you do want like yellow or orange bell pepper, then those would be separate plants. But you can get your green and your red peppers both off of the same plant, and the main difference is when you harvest them. Do you harvest them green or do you wait until they are fully red? And that brings us to kind of the first point in when do you harvest your peppers? Well, the answer is it depends what you want out of the flavor, number one, and then number two, which we'll cover later, it also depends on the pest pressure that might be present in your garden. So number one, for flavor. As you might know, red bell pepper is sweeter than green bell pepper generally, right? And so what's happening as the fruit is ripening, because this is a fruit and not a vegetable because it has seeds on the inside, but definitely as the pepper gets riper, it will turn redder, it will get sweeter, and it will have more of that like red bell pepper flavor, right? But if you were to pick it while it was still green, then it would definitely be just a little bit more bitter. It would be lacking in that sweetness. And of course, there are different uses for the different flavors of these peppers. And if you extend this out to hot peppers, they will get a little bit sweeter, but generally as you allow your hot peppers to ripen, they also get hotter. So a good example of this would be a jalapeno. You can actually get a green jalapeno and a red jalapeno off of the same plant, similar to this. And the difference in when you harvest it will be a little bit of a difference in flavor. So now you might be thinking, okay, if I want to harvest a green bell pepper or a green jalapeno, how am I going to know when to harvest it? Because it's green all the way from when it's this big to when it's its final size, right? So what is the indication that it is getting to its final size and that you're not picking it early? So the first thing to know is that even if you do pick teeny tiny green peppers, no matter what the type, they are going to be edible. And the biggest difference between one that's this little and one that is full size is generally just going to be the size. Picking them early means you will lose out on some of the size of the harvest, right? And then little peppers obviously are a little bit more difficult to deal with depending on the application. Like this would not make a very good stuffed jalapeno, right? So the first thing to know, right, is just to not worry about accidentally picking a little bit too early. It's not dangerous. Nothing bad is going to happen to you. You might find that the flavors are slightly less developed, but in general, picking smaller, picking less ripe is not an issue. However, we all want to maximize our harvest, right? And we want to get the biggest peppers that we can most of the time. And so something that you can look for is the shininess of the skin. So I don't know if you can see this on camera, but you can see how shiny that skin is. And if we compare it to this little teeny tiny one, I think you can see that the skin is a little bit more dull on this one that is way too small. And that's a much easier difference to see in person for sure. And you can also feel the smoothness of that skin versus this one is definitely going to be a little bit less smooth and shiny. So anytime after it reaches that shiny state, most of the time it is done growing and you can go ahead and pick it. If you're still feeling unsure though, and if it's your first time growing this specific type of pepper, you can absolutely leave the first one on the plant and let it start to ripen. The second it starts turning colors, red or whatever other color it might be turning, then it is absolutely done growing, and you can use that as kind of a gauge for, okay, how big does it get before it's done? And then you can go ahead and look for that size and pick all the green peppers that look to be about that size. There will be some variation even on your same plant as to how big they're going to get. They're not all going to be exactly the same, but it's going to be a good gauge, right? And the more that you do this, the more you will be able to tell, okay, this one's about the right size. I can go ahead and pull it, and it doesn't matter if I'm just a little bit early. Or you can say, okay, well, I'm waiting for this one to get red and I'm going to pull it off the plant once it becomes red, and then obviously at that point you will know that it is fully ripe. Now, if we come back over here to my bell pepper that I picked kind of halfway through ripening, what's going to happen to the flavor of this pepper, right? So right now it will taste more like a green pepper than like a red pepper, but it is starting to get sweet. And actually, just like tomatoes, you can set this on your counter and it will continue to ripen over time, especially if you leave it next to something like a banana, which is going to release a lot of the ripening gases. Tomatoes also work really well for this. It will ripen on your counter pretty quickly, and then it will again taste a little bit more like that red pepper. Some people are going to say that if you let it ripen on the plant, it has a sweeter or better flavor. And that is like a little bit true, but in the grand scheme of things, this is going to taste very, very similar ripened indoors to one that was ripened outdoors on the plant. And that brings us to our second point, which is harvesting depending on what sort of pest pressure you might have in your garden. So this pepper right now, you can see it has just a teeny little bit of damage on it, but it is largely undamaged. And that is honestly kind of rare for my bell peppers this time of year. The pests come out, and as soon as they start to ripen just a little bit, they tend to be attacked. So I am often out here picking my peppers, especially my sweet peppers that don't have that capsaicin to deter predators. I am picking them as early as I can, as far as like they've just started to turn, so that I can then bring them inside, keep them safe from pests, and let them fully ripen. Now, like I just mentioned, hot peppers, they tend to not have as much of this problem because they do have that natural capsaicin, which is a deterrent for anything that would be eating the peppers, and obviously sweet peppers don't have that. But the point is that either way that you decide to do it, it's correct, and it's just a call that you're making whether or not you want to let it ripen outside to get that potential little bit of extra flavor, or if you want to take it inside and play it safe with the pests. Now let's go through the garden and talk about exactly how to harvest different types of peppers, because depending on what type of pepper it is, the method is going to be just a little bit different. For a smaller pepper like this, like most hot peppers are, what you can do is simply lift it up against the direction of the curve of the stem and then pop it off. Often they just come right off the plant. And you will see people going through their pepper plants with varying degrees of care as they are pulling their peppers off. Obviously, the more careful you are, the less chance you have of accidentally pulling off a branch, but if that does happen, your plant is going to be just fine. It has just lost a small branch. So that is how we pick some of the smaller peppers, but what about the bigger ones? Bigger peppers tend to have a bigger stem, and I find that they are more securely attached and more likely to rip the plant if you were to pull them off. So at that point, I come in with some clippers and I go ahead and just clip the pepper right off the plant. Lastly, there is a third way to harvest your peppers, and the only plant that I've found that really follows this rule is the Tabasco pepper plant, but other peppers that are in that family where the peppers grow straight up might also be similar to that. I've just never grown them. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So you can see how these peppers grow straight up and down instead of curling over like most others. And right now these are unripe. They are this like cute little waxy yellow green color. And if I were to try and pull it off the plant, it would give me a fair bit of resistance right now. Now I do have one that is ripe down here, and what's going to happen with this one is when I go to pull it off the plant, it breaks off at the base of the stem instead of the stem breaking off the plant. And so for Tabasco, if you can easily break it off the stem like that, then you know that it's ripe. It will not come off before it is ready. If you have any other questions for me about how to know when to harvest your peppers, please leave them in the comments below. If you want to support me, please like and subscribe. And then if you really, really want to support me, check out my Patreon linked below. From my Patreon, you can access all of these videos early and ad-free, as well as a bunch of other bonuses such as custom stickers and a Discord community where you can chat with me and other gardeners about how everything's going in your garden over the course of the season. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, happy gardening.